Team GB reflects on its most successful Olympics in more than a century as the Rio Games come to an end. The closing ceremony was a riot of light and colour as Rio officially handed over to the hosts of 2020, Tokyo. Britain took second place in the medals table after 2 decades of targeted investment in key sports. We'll be looking at Team GB's success and the strategy that led to its medal haul. Also this lunchtime, the Labour leadership contest, ballot papers go out to over 600,000 people eligible to vote. Ministers plan to create separate units in jail to stop extremist Islamist prisoners radicalising other inmates. And 1 year on, survivors and relatives are gathering to remember the Shoreham air disaster in which 11 people were killed.
In the south, as Shoreham remembers, we're at the football club, still mourning 2 of its players. And she served food to the Fab Four. Stories from the stewardess to the stars.
Good afternoon, welcome to the BBC News at 1. Team GB is celebrating Britain's most successful overseas Olympics with a total of 67 medals, the most since 1908. And for the first time since China joined, Britain finished ahead of them in second place on the medal table. Well, the Rio Games drew to an end last night with a spectacular carnival-inspired closing ceremony, which showcased the culture of Brazil and looked forward to the 2020 Games in Tokyo. This morning, Downing Street said the Prime Minister wanted to see Team GB's success recognised and that there'd be no limit on the number of honours available for Olympic athletes. Our Rio correspondent Wirra Davis sent this report.
There may have been a raging storm drenching the performers, but just as the opening ceremony had been in this same stadium a little over 2 weeks ago, this was a celebration of Brazilian culture and, of course, music. No secret has been made of the financial challenges faced by Rio in putting on the Games, or the problems that lie ahead. But this city excels at putting on a party, and for the last fortnight, most people here have put their worries to one side.
Everything very positive. We went to see some football games and we saw also athletics, and we enjoyed it very, very much.
So you think this was a good thing for Brazil?
Oh yes, wonderful. Very nice for Brazil.
Games in Rio were, awesome. Rio's a very welcoming city. Everyone is very friendly. Had a great time. I thought everything worked out really well.
For the host nation, the feel-good factor was fueled by sporting success in the last weekend. Gold in men's volleyball and football. The latter against Germany, exercising the ghosts of World Cup shame 2 years ago. But if Brazil can be pleased with their medal haul, Team GB has exceeded expectations. The team finished in second place with an overall tally of 67 medals, 27 of them gold. As the UK athletes entered the stadium, they were unmistakable in their distinctive, flashing Olympic footwear.
We are now one of the superpowers of Olympic sport, and here we are, second in the medal table, above China, with more gold medals and I think more silver medals as well. Is an amazing place to be, and it shows that we are a force to be reckoned with in world sport.
Sporting successes aside, there have been some serious concerns for the IOC here in Rio. Sometimes stadiums have seemed almost half full, and there are serious financial worries ahead with the Paralympics just around the corner. At times, managers admit it's felt like crisis management, but the consensus is that Rio has pulled it off. The baton, or to be precise, the flag, has now been handed over to Tokyo, which will host the 2020 Games.
And here he is, Super Mario, and the man portraying him is the Prime Minister.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe provided the surprise moment of the night, popping up literally as the cartoon character Super Mario. Tokyo will be different, that much was evident from the city's brief show. But the verdict on Rio and Brazil, it was sometimes hairy, but job well done, and always with a smile. Wirra Davis, BBC News, Rio.
So how did Team GB gather such a medal haul? Its success may have had its roots in the failure at Atlanta 20 years ago when the UK picked up just 1 gold. That led to a great deal of soul-searching and the injection of funds from the recently started National Lottery. But it's not just about money, it's about how it's used. Our sports correspondent Richard Conway reports.
Matthew Benson, mission accomplished.
That solitary gold medal for Team GB at the Atlanta '96 Olympics is now but a distant memory. 20 years on, and how times change. 67 medals, including 27 golds, represents Britain's greatest Olympic haul in over a century. From Mo Farah's historic track double to Amy Tinkler winning a medal aged just 16 in gymnastics, Team GB had strength in depth.
It's tougher to imagine a stronger performance, to come away from your own home games, to come to an environment like this and perform and actually deliver in the way they delivered across the board.
But how has it been achieved? UK Sport, the body which funds elite athletes, has targeted £274 million of lottery cash to 20 sports over the past 4 years. Of 28 sports in total at the Rio Games, Britain finished on the podium in 19. That means 129 of the 366 British athletes that went to Brazil will return with a medal.
Great Britain's Glover and Stanning defend their Olympic title, and they have done it in such style.
After the 65 medals won at London 2012, there were doubts such levels could be maintained. But pragmatism has now given way to celebration.
To be able to, fly home with medals in our pockets that make us the most successful team ever, it's just something that we couldn't have predicted on the way out. When we flew out, we had hoped it, dreamed it, but the fact that it's happened, I think, is amazing for everyone.
UK Sport's catchphrase is no compromise, a reflection of a ruthless, targeted investment strategy. But officials believe Rio's legacy can now inspire greater public participation in sport.
We, like everyone else in sport, want to see a healthier nation that regularly takes part in sport and physical activity. And our role in that continuum is to produce heroes and heroines, and I think, as you can see, we're doing that.
At around £4 million per medal, British success certainly comes with a price tag. But after a golden Brazilian summer, those in charge of the funding believe it is money well spent. Richard Conway, BBC News.
Well, let's go back for one last time to the Olympic Park and to our correspondent, Julia Canera. Julia.
Yes, Rita, I'm here outside the Olympic Park with some special guests to talk about this amazing performance that Team GB has had. And, Joe Joyce, super heavyweight boxer, was the one to get the last medal of the 67 that Team GB managed to get. So I'd like to ask you, how was that feeling, Joe? Because you managed to get what was the 700th medal for Team GB since the lottery funding started.
Yeah, obviously it's an amazing achievement, and it's great to come home with a medal around my neck. It's pretty heavy. I really wanted the gold. I thought I had the gold, it's just been an amazing experience. And I'd like to thank the BOA and Mark England, and also the lottery funding for
supporting us. What was the atmosphere like for Team GB being part of this team that got so many medals? It's just amazing when you think about it. Like we beat the London quota of medal counts, and it's just been a great games for us. Like we're second and in the running, so such a small country to get all the medals. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And let's talk a little bit about those results to Mark England. Well, you're the chef de mission. You've had this amazing achievement of getting even a better result here in Rio than you did at home in London in 2012. How did you do that?
Well, absolutely all credit to the athletes, and Joe was really unlucky not to win the gold yesterday. Many people thought he had done, and that would have been the icing on the cake, not only for him personally but for the team, but all across the team. Whether they medalled, the athletes medalled, or whether they did their best performances, they were absolutely outstanding. And it was just a privilege to watch each and every one of them perform, and they performed to the best of their ability out here in pretty tough conditions. We're in South America, it's not an easy place to come to perform, and they were absolutely outstanding. We're very, very proud of all of them.
Where do you take it from here? How do you keep the momentum?
Well, it's a good question because the momentum is there in the team now. Our planning for Tokyo is very well advanced, as you'd expect. We came here first of all in May 2010, so it's a 6-year journey. So we've already started that. We've identified where we prefer our pre-games training base to be, which is in Yokohama, south of Tokyo, just a short ride from the Olympic Park. And yeah, the athletes will really enjoy it. The games will be very special there, I'm sure, and the Japanese will put on a great show. But it'll be tough because, you know, Japan are, you know, they won a medal in the 4x100. I mean, just, you know, in the men's relay, I mean, that was extraordinary. And so we know that they will perform to the best of their ability, and home advantage will carry them through. So, you know, we're looking forward to the battle.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Absolutely,
England
my
and
pleasure.
Joe Joyce here from Rio. As everyone's already talking about Rio to Tokyo, what comes next, and Rio closing the Olympic ceremonies, the first Olympics in South America ever. Back to you, Rita.
Julia, many thanks. And we've got one final piece of Olympic action and proof that you can't be the greatest at everything. After the closing ceremony, Usain Bolt took to the field once more to try his hand at javelin. After working up what was left of the crowd, the 9-time Olympic gold medalist threw a respectable 56 metres. Not bad, but a distance that would have left him last in the women's javelin final. BBC News will have full coverage of Team GB's homecoming from tomorrow morning at 9:30 on BBC Two and also on the BBC News channel. Now, ballot papers are being sent out today to more than 2/3 of a million people who can vote in the Labour leadership contest. Party members will get a say, along with those belonging to unions and almost 130,000 registered supporters. Our political correspondent Tom Bateman's report contains some flashing images.
Owen Smith was on home soil in South Wales today in front of some loyal party activists. As part of his challenge to Jeremy Corbyn for the leadership, he promised to give more power to a growing party membership.
We will elect a members' cabinet from right across our party and our country to advise the leader and to advise the ministers on strategy and tactics. That will be a revolution in the leadership of the Labour Party. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Compare his reception today to this. Jeremy Corbyn last night demonstrating his extraordinary pulling power at rallies. But for his opponents, that appeal won't extend to winning a general election. What is clear, though, is that people have been signing up to be involved in the Labour Party in their droves. More than 640,000 people will have the right to vote in this leadership election. Of those, more than half are full party members. And nearly 130,000 paid £25 for the right to vote, adding more than £3 million to the Labour Party coffers. The process of sifting through the sheer numbers of people who apply to vote in this leadership election has been a big exercise here at Labour Party headquarters. Today, Jeremy Corbyn's campaign have said they are confident he will win, believing he has that groundswell of grassroots support behind him. But it is his challenger, Owen Smith, who is currently counting the big-name endorsements. Labour's most powerful politician in office, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, says he is backing Mr Smith, as does the Scottish Labour Party leader Kezia Dugdale, who said today that Mr Corbyn speaks to the converted, not the country. But Jeremy Corbyn's campaign have in turn accused the London Mayor of burning his political bridges.
I think the fact is, it looks actually, to be honest, quite desperate. They're throwing the kitchen sink at Jeremy. You know why? Because he's going to win. And I think they're really, really scared of him winning with an even bigger mandate.
It's only a year since leadership ballot papers were last winging their way to Labour Party members. They do so again after a political drama that will shape not just the result, but the aftermath for some time to come. Tom Bateman, BBC News.
The Justice Secretary Liz Truss is to take tough new measures to stop Islamist extremists from radicalising other inmates in prisons in England and Wales. They're to be held in separate prison units after a review said there was complacency at the growing problem of extremism in jails. Our Home Affairs correspondent Danny Shaw reports.
Facing a long prison sentence, one of Britain's most notorious Islamist extremists, Anjem Choudhury. His conviction last month, a reminder of how many supporters of violent jihad, al-Qaeda and so-called Islamic State are locked up in England and Wales. For years there's been concern that these violent Islamists could be radicalising other prisoners. A report by a former prison governor has warned that extremism is a growing problem behind bars, and now the government has accepted 8 of the report's 11 main proposals. It'll create specialist units within high-security prisons to separate the most dangerous extremists from other prisoners. There'll be tighter vetting of Muslim prison chaplains, and extremist literature will be removed from prison libraries. Governors have already been ordered to take away 5 texts.
We are taking this extremely seriously. This is a growing threat in our prison estate, and that's why we're making sure that every single officer will have full training by the end of this year to spot the signs of extremism.
But the new approach, concentrating dangerous men in small prison units, has risks. In 1994, IRA prisoners were among a group of 6 who escaped from Whitemoor Jail in Cambridgeshire. They were later recaptured. Republican prisoners held together in prison in Northern Ireland staged breakouts as well.
We have lived through this, particularly in Northern Ireland, where concentrating terrorists in one place created really quite serious problems, including creating a recruiting tool for the IRA during that period.
Ministers say the plans will be the responsibility of a new Security, Order and Counter-Terrorism Department. Prison reformers say there should also be a focus on protecting prisoners who are vulnerable to radicalisation. Danny Shaw, BBC News.
The time is 16 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime. The Olympic closing ceremony was a riot of light and colour as Rio officially handed over to the hosts of 2020, Tokyo. The Games have officially come to a close. We'll look back on what has been a fabulous 2 weeks of sport.
In South today at 1:30, Hands Around the Horton, the campaign to maintain maternity services at a Banbury hospital. And the stewardess to the stars, one woman's story of flying high with the Fab Four.
Now, in an attempt to find a cure for Alzheimer's, a major new study has been announced which hopes to shed light on the very early stages of the disease. Hundreds of volunteers will use techniques including wearable technology to identify biomarkers, which are the very early physical signs. Experts hope the research will open up new means of tackling Alzheimer's before the brain suffers serious damage. Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes has more.
Alzheimer's disease is casting a cloud over what should have been a fruitful retirement for Peter Linden.
How do you think that?
But years before Peter became aware of his condition, his body was offering clues known as biomarkers, small physical signs the disease was taking hold. Now Peter is involved in research that may answer some troubling questions.
One is principally bothered about how much time you've got when you're likely to be competent until the time that you are no longer competent. And I think that probably is the overarching concern I've had in the past, in the present and in the future.
Peter underwent a whole range of tests, mental and physical, to help researchers find the biomarkers for Alzheimer's. Identifying the disease early may be the best hope of finding an effective treatment.
By the time someone comes to their GP and they think they might have some memory problems and they get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, it's likely that the brain has been under attack from this illness for 10 or even 20 years beforehand. So we really urgently need to pick up the illness in that 10 or 20 years beforehand, and the only way we can do that is by finding biomarkers in that phase that we can target clinical trials at.
So we stick the sensor on this stick.
In Newcastle, Trish Jones is another volunteer, getting ready to undergo an examination of how she walks. The research uses wearable technology to track how Trish moves. The beauty of this wearable technology is it's relatively cheap. It's the sort of thing that exists in most people's mobile phones, and its use isn't restricted to a highly equipped laboratory like this one. It can be used in people's homes as they go about their everyday business, and that will give the researchers a much more realistic picture of what's really going on.
Okay. When I'm walking normally, I do have a wobble. I can be distracted and just start veering off, you know. Probably people think I'm drunk, I don't know. Hope not.
How we walk is exactly the sort of biomarker that researchers want to concentrate on.
We're not headless chickens. We have to think about what we're doing with our feet. You have to make a lot of decisions about navigation. Someone might be distracting you and talking to you. There's an awful lot of cognitive skills that are required to enable someone to walk and to walk safely and independently.
For Peter, the fight against Alzheimer's is personal. But if this research means we can spot and stop the disease in its very early stages, all of us will benefit. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
The former Radio 1 DJ Chris Denning has pleaded guilty to a series of historical sex offences, many against children. Denning, who's 75, was charged after a police investigation into a disco in Surrey known as the Walton Hop. Our correspondent Dan Johnson reports.
Yeah, the show's Where It's At on the BBC Live programme, and this is Chris Denning with you right through until 5 o'clock.
Chris Denning, one of the original voices of Radio 1. A star who used his celebrity status to abuse boys as young as 8. These aren't the first crimes he's admitted. The former DJ's already serving a 13-year sentence for the abuse of 24 boys. Today, he pleaded guilty to abusing 11 more between 1969 and 1986.
Some of Chris Denning's victims were in court this morning to watch him face the 24 counts of indecent assault and indecency with children. It took time to read all the charges to him. 21 times he answered that he was guilty. To another 3 counts, he pleaded not guilty.
He didn't hide his interest in young boys. Here, talking to a TV documentary maker.
I would say my key age of attraction is about 15 or 16, actually. I am a 14-year-old boy in a 68, 9, 150-year-old horrible body.
And this is where he found many of his victims. It used to be the Walton Hop Disco, a teen night that ran for years in Walton-on-Thames. More recently, the focus of a police investigation.
The Walton Hop was always very great fun. And I did feel rather good there because most of the young people recognised me or knew me. And so I suppose I felt important.
In the late 90s, he was jailed in the Czech Republic. He also served time in Slovakia and for other offences here in Britain.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this, the second in our series of programmes, Look Where You're Going. Now, as a result,
Denning was a TV presenter as well as a DJ, but it was Radio 1 that brought him fame. Here, with the original lineup, and again for a reunion 30 years later. His public persona masked serial sex offending. Decades of abuse still being uncovered. He'll be sentenced for these latest admissions in October. Dan Johnson, BBC News at Southwark Crown Court.
The leaders of Germany, France and Italy, the 3 biggest countries in the European Union after Britain's vote to leave, are meeting near Naples to consider the way forward for the EU. We'll speak now to our correspondent Naomi Grimley, who's in Naples for us now. And Naomi, what's the focus here? Is it Brexit or is it the other issues faced by the EU, such as the economy and migration?
Well, as you point out, they've got a lot in their in tray, but I think Brexit will be top of that because they are really worried about not coming up with a united response to Brexit. They're worried that they may end up sending mixed signals to the rest of the world and to the UK. It will also be a moment to try and reinvigorate love for the EU. Many of its citizens feel there's a gap between the institutions in Brussels and what actually happens in day-to-day life. And that's why Matteo Renzi is going to take them out to an island where one of the founding fathers of the EU is buried. It's almost a way of trying to renew the vows of love for the European Union. Will there be a direct message for Theresa May? Well, I think they will be polite but firm in making it clear that she will not be able to pick and choose the bits of the EU she likes, whilst disregarding the bits that she doesn't like freedom of movement, which is unpopular with British voters. And that's because leaders here are very worried that Euroscepticism may take hold in other member states, that they may think that leaving the EU is an easy thing to do, and then it really could start fraying at the edges.
Naomi, thank you. A minute's silence has just been held in Shoreham to mark the anniversary of the airshow crash. It's a year since a vintage jet crashed into traffic on the A27, killing 11 people. The ceremony took place just a few minutes ago at 1:22, which is when the plane came down. Our correspondent Duncan Kennedy reports.
It was exactly a year ago this lunchtime the vintage Hawker Hunter jet came down whilst performing at the Shoreham Air Show. Its disintegrating parts and aviation fuel engulfed the busy A27 road. Those who were killed included a footballer, a retired engineer and a keen cyclist. Daniel Polito died along with his friend. Today his mother, Leslie, who had this bench made in memory of him, said the past year had been unbearable.
We look back on all the pleasant memories, try not to dwell on the bad side of things, really. That is what we want to be. You know, for his memory is to live every day, be as happy as one can, and cherish all the good times.
The oldest to die in this crash was Morris Abrahams, 76, and a chauffeur who was on his way to pick up a bride. Today his closest friend said it had been a year of questions and heartache.
He loved his car, it was his pride and joy, and he was a really nice person. As I said, he used to tell me jokes, he enjoyed life, you know.
The aircraft pilot, Andy Hill, survived the crash and is waiting to hear if he'll face manslaughter charges. For the people of Shoreham, those matters were today set to one side, to pause, to reflect, and to cherish loved ones.
And that was Duncan Kennedy reporting. Government officials in Turkey say a majority of the victims of the bombing of a wedding party in the city of Gaziantep on Saturday were children. The funerals have been held for 29 children killed by a suicide bomber, himself identified by officials as being around the age of 12. The International Criminal Court has heard its first case today of cultural destruction. An Islamist militant, Ahmed Al-Faki Al-Mahdi, who's from Mali, pleaded guilty to war crimes in which historic sites were destroyed in the ancient city of Timbuktu in 2012. Time now to look at the weather. Here's Darren Bett. Darren.
It's going to be getting hotter for some of us, Rita, but we've got some summer contrasts again today. It's been an improving day, though, here in East Sussex. Weather Watcher picture after the earlier rain. Sun has come out. It's warming up nicely. This looks very different, though. Very gloomy, very grey and very wet, actually, across parts of Lancashire. There have been reports of localised flooding. River levels have been rising. There's been about 2 inches, 50 millimetres of rain today. You can see how the rain belt has really got stuck in the same place. It should just trickle a little bit further south over the next couple of hours. And either side of that, we've got some sunshine and much drier weather indeed through the rest of the day. It looks pretty good, actually, for the southeast, especially south of London. Temperatures are going to be getting into the mid-20s. Along the south coast, lovely afternoon all the way into southern parts of Devon and Cornwall. Back northwards again, though, we'll see more cloud. We'll see some rain setting in again across Wales, just drifting away from North Lancashire and away from Cumbria. So some improvements later on today. Not bad for Northern Ireland. Some sunshine and quite warm, actually, for eastern Scotland. A bit of rain up towards the Northern Isles, heading northwards and out of the way. This is our main rain band, though. It's going to head northwards again overnight, actually, and the rain will become steadier and heavier as it moves away from Wales, clips again the northwest of England, and it turns wetter in Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland later. South of that rain, we're going to find some mist, fog and low cloud forming. But there is some hotter weather on the way for the next few days, but it's certainly not going to be everywhere. Other places will see more cloud and perhaps some rain. The mist and low cloud will soon clear away from England and Wales. Then a lovely day here tomorrow, but we've got much more cloud for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Outbreaks of rain. That rain becomes lighter and more patchy into the afternoon, but a huge difference in temperatures. 16, 17 degrees for Glasgow and Belfast. It gets hotter as you head southeastwards across England and Wales. Headline temperature 29, maybe 30 degrees across the southeast of England. We're getting hot air imported from the near continent, but towards the northwest, that weather front still producing rain, and behind that we've got some cooler and fresher air. Now, during the course of Tuesday night and Wednesday, this weather front could bring some heavy rain and thunderstorms across eastern Scotland, northeast England just for a time, but during the day on Wednesday the weather front becomes much weaker. No more than a few showers on it during the day and a band of cloud, but it drops the temperature across Wales, western England, and pushes the remaining heat towards East Anglia in the southeast. Again, close to 30 degrees, but then it could all go bang during Wednesday night and into Thursday for England and Wales. There could be some really nasty storms. Don't rely on it staying dry in the southeast, and in the northwest some sunshine and more usual showers. Rita.
Thank you, Darren. So the Rio 2016 Games have officially come to a close. The ceremony at the famous Maracana Stadium saw the Olympic flag handed over to Tokyo, the host for the Games in 2020. Hundreds of athletes turned out to celebrate, including many of the Games stars. Our correspondent Adam Wilde looks back now on what has been a fabulous 2 weeks of sport.
Every 4 years comes a celebration of sport, and there are few places that can party quite like Rio.
Olympic Games à la Brazil.
They call this the Marvellous City. Now the Games just had to live up to the name. For Team GB, the wait for medals was short, but then Adam Peaty doesn't wait for anyone.
Adam Peaty takes Olympic gold for Great Britain, a wonderful world record.
Imperious, peerless, in the pool Britain's best games for over a century. Whilst the water was perhaps an unusual colour, the colour for Britain was gold.
Yes! Come on! Law and Mears have done it!
Above the waves, around the bays, rowing in Rio was truly spectacular.
And it is Great Britain in the men's eight are the Olympic champions. It's carnival time here at the Lagoa for Great Britain.
Britain once again ruling the waves. History here being written and then rewritten. Jason Kenny's 6th gold medal, his fiancée Laura Trott's 4th. These were tales of triumph, of passion. Britain had found its golden couple. Elsewhere, sibling rivalry replaced by brotherly love.
A gold and silver for the Brownlee brothers.
Success that showed age is just another barrier to be overcome. Nick Skelton, gold at 58. Amy Tinkler, bronze at just 16. All games need their superstars. Rio had plenty, some catapulting themselves onto the biggest stage.
How does she do it?
For others, a final flourish before a fond farewell. There were those that arrived as superstars and leave as legends.
And Usain Bolt is going what he always does. It's gold again. The triple, the greatest ever.
The Olympic spirit embodied in the heat of battle, the fallen not left behind. Still, these were Rio's games. Rafaela Silva, gold, a fairy tale from the favelas.
Magnificent moment in the Marvellous City.
Coming first, well, that is special, but sometimes being the first is a much greater triumph. Simone Manuel, the first black woman to win swimming gold. These were the history makers.
Andy Murray is a double Olympic gold medalist.
The risk takers and the heartbreakers.
It is incredible. I was so close to the Olympic champion.
Some were doing what no one had done before. Some were doing what no one has done for a very long time.
Justin Rose of Great Britain takes Olympic gold.
Whilst others were just doing what they've always done.
Mo Farah's gone. He's away. Mo Farah is going to get gold for Great Britain again. The double-double. I think one of the greatest distance runners the world's ever seen. A rise to Mo.
But amid such company, even giving everything might not be quite enough. At times, it was just enough.
Scores! That's the golden goal! Great Britain have won the Olympic gold medal!
Marvellous moments in the marvellous city. For these athletes, this was some party.